everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. I guess you probably have guessed that by now. At least I think you did. I'm glad you did. So if you are new to the podcast, thank you for joining us. Thank you for finding the podcast. And by the way, if you found it, thank you to all the other people prior to you for writing a review or liking it or giving a thumbs up or sharing it or whatever it is that y'all do on whatever program or platform you find this podcast. And either it's going to be on Instagram, where posts are often made, or some Facebook groups, it's sometimes up there. Or if you're just listening to it on, the Apple Podcasts, or if you're on Spotify, or if you're pretty much anywhere else where podcasts are found. And if you're on YouTube, you can also find it there, the video podcast. You can see my ridiculous face, etc. So thank you to everybody who previously had written a review, liked it. That helps the information get out there, sharing it word of mouth, that all helps. So I don't advertise for the podcast. I barely put stuff on Instagram. I know I probably should to get this information out there. So thank you all to everybody who has shared it before, or who has liked or written a review. And to that end, if you like the podcast and could spare a couple of minutes, go on YouTube, go on Instagram, don't go on Instagram for this, I suppose. Go on Spotify or iTunes and write a review. Give us 5 stars. I would prefer 5 stars, but you know what? You do you. Give an honest review. But go up and that helps to bump the information, helps to get the information out there, helps other people hear about it a little bit more. So that's all I'm going to say. I didn't plan to share that at the beginning. Point is, this is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question that you would like to ask me, and I'll try to answer as best I possibly can and as honestly as I can, go over to fearcastpodcast.com, send me a question by clicking on the submit a question link. You can send an audio question by clicking on the record your question button. It's at the top right of the page at fearcastpodcast.com. It's right there in the middle as well, and it's in various places as well. You can send me a question over there. You can also go to Instagram. I'm Fearcast Podcast over there. Send me an audio question in the DMs. I'll get it, put it up. Audio questions do get prioritized and go to the top of the list. And by the way, someone out there, I think, clicked the button, maybe accidentally, maybe not, and it only recorded 1 second of it. So if you tried to go on recently to put up a question and you think it got to me, it didn't. So go up, send me another one. I will get it. I will put it up on the next recording. So I think that's all I really got for y'all today. So other than the question. So the question today is kind of long. I'm going to try to do my best to read the whole thing, and it's going to be me reading a lot. So I do apologize, but I want to try to get the information in and just honor GS's question about this very scary, very worrisome existential OCD question. So we haven't really talked about existential OCD in quite some time. I really like these questions. They're I'll share this a little bit later on, but I as a therapist, and other therapists too, we have an Achilles heel, and it's a problem that we all try to address and we want to acknowledge as best we can. It's hard to not get sucked into these questions and to not debate them like we're trying to prove it, but they're fun thoughts. They're interesting thoughts. They are fascinating thoughts and considerations. I as a Christian person and who also values and is interested by religion and faith in general, I love talking to clients about their faith and beliefs and doctrine and that sort of stuff and how it's practiced in their tradition. And the problem is when there's this overlap between their symptoms and something that's interesting, boy, it's hard to pull yourself out of that and look at it from OCD's lens and not argue from the content of the obsession, right? So this is kind of more of a broad point to everybody. I swear I'm going to get to the question, is we have a tendency, and this is OCD's game, right? So this is not your fault or a problem or anything like that. It's that this happens to us, is that we get sucked into the drive to discuss the topic from the topic's perspective, right? So, we talk about this as, sexual orientation OCD, right? The OCD suggests that the way out of the obsession is by solving the puzzle of your sexuality, right? Boy, if you just get to the bottom of this and you fully understand who you are, what you're about, what you feel, what you want, what you're attracted to, what you're not, then you'll get out of the cycle. You will you'll go on to I don't know, sexuality nirvana. I don't know. Point is we think that if we just solve it, we'll get out of it. If we just wash right, clean our house right, if we organize right, if we say the thing perfectly. Boy, if I say that prayer right and feel it the way I should, finally my faith will be actualized. God will love me. I will be forgiven. I will receive atonement, and everything will be fine. And it is for like 5 seconds. And then it goes right back to fear and what ifs, and maybe I didn't do right, right? There's no getting out of it. There's no getting out of it through the content. The way that we get out of it is by tolerating the uncertainty and the feeling of it, and by letting go of trying to get the answer and living, maybe not getting the full answer of things, right? So I'm getting ahead of myself, GS, and everybody else out there. So why don't I get on to this question? So again, I apologize for my reading, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing because there was, I know, everyone's freaking out. There was some profanity in it. Now, I'm going to try to take it out because I want this to be as family-friendly as existential questions get. But I'm just going to try to do some editing. If I mess it up, I'm going to mess it up, and I'll bleep it or something like that. So I will say, why I want to read this as well is that the person also acknowledges that they are in such distress that they're having some self-harm thoughts. So I'm going to say this in advance to anybody else out there who is having self-harm thoughts in relation to these fears. Go talk to a therapist. Don't play around, don't mess around with this, and don't further engage with the obsession. Go talk to a therapist. Go share this and get to the bottom of this, okay? So hurting yourself is certainly not the way out of this. It won't solve any problems. It only amplifies this. And when we start to play with that mindset, it justifies and amplifies the belief that we have, so much so that we think that that's the only out, and then it justifies the thought, and it says, see, it must be so bad because I'm thinking about this thought, but see, it must be so bad, how do I get out? And it just feeds back into that cycle, right? So OCD is treatable. Anxiety is treatable. There is a way to live with this, live this life with having these feelings and these thoughts, and hurting oneself or killing oneself is certainly not the way out of it. So that's what I'm going to say at the top end to this. For anybody else out there who's having those thoughts, and I trust me, I know that there are people out there who are having these thoughts. I know what it means to have those thoughts as well, and it's not fun. It's not a comfort in the long run, and it doesn't solve any problems. So go talk to somebody. So with all of those caveats and all of that just overwhelming seriousness, let's get on to his question here. Got to drink some water. I'm doing the switch, right? Because you all know that I drink way too much coffee. I'm trying to stop at like 2 in the afternoon because otherwise I'm up until like midnight, and I go like, why aren't I sleeping? It's so weird. I know why. And yet I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm drinking water. We'll see how this goes. All right, here we go. So GS says, what's the question? Existential OCD. He says, please read, all caps. All right. I'm in excruciating hell and desperate. I'm immensely appreciating you taking the time to read this. Now I'll get to the point. And then he goes on very long, but it's a long point. All right, so he says, what the godforsaken F do you do if science and scientists no longer only some horrifying philosophers assert that something that is true makes life fundamentally unlivable, at least in any truly genuine way? Meaning, it is no longer a matter of philosophy alone, assuming it is / they are somehow correct about it. Without getting into too much of my misery here, I'm talking about the topic of free will. Science, especially neuroscience, and then he goes on to name a bunch of names. I'm going to mispronounce them, I promise you. Robert Sapolsky, Alex O'Connor, Dr. Yona, impronounceable Balskill, okay, something. It's going to be written there. Real experiments, fMRI data, etc. They have, and in their interviews and books and such. Right? So apparently, a lot of research, a lot of people. Alex O'Connor is, I think he's known as, what is he? Oh shoot, I had a client talk about him before. Something atheist, the reasonable atheist. The cosmic skeptic, I don't know, something skeptic. Anyways, he's got some interesting YouTube videos. I watched a bunch a while ago. This is a separate conversation. All right. How can one who has had extreme crippling obsessive fear, despair, and debilitation about this hellish, horrifying topic continue to treat it as nothing more than existential OCD and depersonalization or derealization, which I've struggled with have struggled with extremely and have had disability or have been disabled because of it. If science has now shown in multiple ways, again and again, the truth of it, the science has been an infinite supply of cyanide-infused gasoline for the agonizing fire that my depersonalization, derealization, and existential OCD, feeling out of control, unreal, and robotically irrelevant. How could there be anything worse for such conditions? I wanted to record that with like some heavy metal music in the background because, man, it sounds intense. All right. Can one really genuinely say that science doesn't matter somehow? I honestly can't fathom it not mattering to the point of being genuinely wanting to hurt myself. Assuming anything at all about me could be genuine at all. Excuse me. I'm trying to edit at the same time. Would I not be delusional to disregard real scientific evidence to continue living on through my life is, or as it can be, actually genuine at all, when the evidence points to be that to being utterly false? How can damn near anything at all be remotely genuine or authentic about a human life if this is somehow truly correct? How can there be any real speck of anything? All right, so it sounds like, by the way, why I'm also reading this is I think this also gives us insight into the amount of rumination and what rumination sounds like for GS. All of this sounds very catastrophic, very terrible, very frightening, and very like the impending doom aspect of it, right? I can't fathom pretty much any of my life experience, including intentions, needs, desires, individuality, efforts, agency, joys, pains, or pretty much anything else at all mattering in any way if science has so clearly proven it to be irrelevant, illusory, and invalid at the very least implicitly. Because if all a human is truly just a flesh automaton, how could any inner or outer life be life of one be legitimately valid or truly worth living? And so if you want to look further into this, and he lists a couple of podcasts or a couple of things, but he says, if there's not only a philosophical basis for this extreme fear, but a scientific one too, what good could ICBT possibly do? Because if you really say it's just OCD at such a horrific, wait, hold on. Because can you really say it's just OCD at such a horrific point? So with real science involved. All right. So basically, how can you just say it's just OCD when he's claiming scientific research is proving this point that we have no free will? So how could hurting myself not be better than living something which is truly fundamentally fraudulent, as this science demonstrates or asserts? I just don't know how to be okay with living a lie. I'm miserable. God help me. All right. So GS, I really appreciate you sharing this. And I appreciate you sharing this despite my ridiculous comments in this, is because you aren't the only person who's experiencing this struggle and this fear and this discomfort. So these are these can be really scary thoughts. And the idea that then, well, let me give you, let me just give you a summary for anybody who isn't familiar with this. And I'll be honest, I had to Google some of those folks' names, but kind of the idea is that we send the assertion is we have no free will. All right. So we aren't, and I'm going to get this wrong and I apologize, GS, or get this inaccurate. The idea is that we don't have any free will. So we aren't making our decisions ourselves, right? So we don't have genuine conscious thought that is thinking through these things and weighing the pros and cons and coming to a conclusion based on our values and what's truly right. Instead is that we are programmed by society, programmed by our parents, programmed by schools, or just, we are receiving all this information, and our brain is coming up with the responses or actions or intentions before we know it, and then before we seemingly make a decision, instead that decision has already been made by our robot mind or whatever it might be. We just make an action and we just go forward and do it. Therefore, we aren't making the choice. The conscious part of us is just responding to something that has been pre-programmed or predestined through our brain, and we are just going ahead and doing it. Okay. So how does anything matter at all from that perspective, right? So the idea behind this, there's lots of implications that folks have had, and some of the clients that I've talked about this with, some of the implications is ultimately that nothing then matters in life, right? We're not responsible for our actions or our choices. Right. So, I don't really want to, I'm not really a good person. I'm just following the laws and morals and values that have been given to me. Right. I don't really like the things that I like because through my various experiences, I've been trained or have come to this point where, something in me made the decision for me to be a therapist, or something in me made the decision for me to fall in love with my wife, or whatever the case may be, right? But it also goes further to say, if then I go out there and kill somebody, it's not my fault. It's not me making the conscious choice. I was just a robot following my programming from the universe, the world around me, and therefore I can't be held responsible for it. It therefore has implications. What do we do with people who have murdered people, who do steal, right? So it goes off and on and on and on down the rabbit holes that I can't even fathom, that someone with existential OCD grabs onto and just goes, right? Now, what I often find with this is that it leads to this fear that what if we're going to do something out of control, right? I think that's I'm getting ahead of myself again. Is that when we talk about OCD, we often are going to look for what's the feared story, right? What's the core of all this? What is the thing that OCD is grabbing onto and really highlighting and making a big deal about, or implying something is going to happen? And for some of this, it's that nothing matters, and that I might then do something that's out of my control, right? And there can be a lot of gradation for a lot of people out there on what this means for them. But for some of it, it's what if I then don't? What if I'm not me? Right. And there's an element of that kind of fear with other sort of obsessions as well, right? Like for our OCD, what if I don't truly know who I love, right? Sexual orientation OCD sometimes is, what if I don't truly know myself and truly know who I'm attracted to, right? That's supposed to be something that's truly I should know, right? Some of the existential is what if I just don't know who or what I am? What if I'm not making my own decisions and I'm just being controlled by this, right? And in a sense, there's an out of control component to that, right? So, there again, there's a lot of implications with this, and I'll say it again. It is really tempting to debate this and discuss this. I think it's a fun. I think it's a fun conversation. GS, you do not think it is a very fun conversation. You think it is a very horrifying and impending doom-laden conversation, right? But there are people out there who are making millions of dollars talking about this. There are people out there there are Facebook groups and Reddit groups and conversation groups over coffee about whether this is true or real. There are people getting tenure in colleges and universities because they are researching this and talking about it and writing about it, and philosophers doing it, now scientists doing it. The point is that some people find joy and interest and delight in this conversation, but you are experiencing it as fear and danger and the oh no's, right? Okay, so it's tempting for me to have a discussion about this. And boy, I'll tell you, I'm trying to embrace artificial intelligence. I'm trying to embrace ChatGPT. I've been futzing with it a little bit more than I have been in the past. And I asked her the question, I was like, what are the implications of this? And I asked a couple of things, and it kind of gave me some stuff. And there was the impulse for me, and I think that I'm willing to bet your family and friends do this too, and you are certainly doing this to yourself. There is the urge to try to fight fire with fire in this, and to try to come at this with more logic and reason, and to try to talk you out of it, GS, and to bring reason. But I know, my other brain knows, and my experience tells me that ain't getting us anywhere. It's certainly getting you nowhere, right? You've researched this more than I ever will, and you know more about this than I ever will. And that's great. And I'm not going to talk you out of this, because here's the reality. I don't know. I don't know. And they're doing research on this, and they're doing scientific studies on this, and they're coming up with some results, and they're pointing to a certain direction. And you know what I'll say to that? Science changes, right? Things change. We discover new things. We make discoveries, and then years later we discover that was nonsense, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know, and I'm not going to try to take a firm stance on whether it is or isn't happening, okay? Because I don't think that's going to help you, and I don't think that's going to help anybody else out there. It certainly won't help me. So again, I want to first start talking about what it sounds like the problem is, because I hear that pain in what you're saying. So first off, I get the sense that you're feeling out of control, right? But I want to say that this is OCD, okay? So this is OCD, and rumination, reading, and podcasting is not satisfying the curiosity anymore. Now, originally, I'm willing to bet there was this question you had, because remember, we've talked about OCD before. So for those who are new, there's this obsessive thought, this what if or if then, or just this academic question. Hey, what if this is true, right? Or, oh no, what if this happens if you don't do this, right? And that makes us feel anxious, right? So we do something, the compulsion, to try to eliminate that outcome, or to try to at the very least make ourselves feel better. Okay. Once we do that, we get this reinforcement. We get this relief. It feels better. We feel calm. We feel safe. We feel empowered. We feel in control again. Or at the very least, we feel not bad, right? But that reinforces the obsessive thought in the first place, because it reinforces the cycle. Because now if we ever get this thought again, well, we know what to do. And we do those things. We get relief. But what if we get the thought again? Well, it feels scary, but I know what to do again because I do this. But that compulsion loses its power over time. And the compulsion, the obsession, requires more and more input, more and more effort, more and more thought, more and more action over time, right? So maybe initially there was this question, and you read a quick Wikipedia article and you went, oh, okay, that's cool. It's interesting, but I feel kind of safe. And then you heard something, saw something, felt something, or just a random thought popped in that went, well, maybe there's more. And you went, well, I don't like the sound of that. So you go and you research more. And now you're listening to podcasts, and you're watching YouTube videos, and maybe you're reading books and articles and other things, and watching documentaries and talking to your friends about it. And you're trying to get as much information as you possibly can on it. And none of it is satisfying that fear. And now it feels like, well, science is answering it. Well, science is always going to outperform philosophy. So therefore science is proving it. So now your biggest fear that, those silly philosophers were coming up with, that is now a fact because science proved it. And that's scary. And now what do we do? Where do we go with it? Right? We can see how this starts to snowball onto itself, and how compulsions ultimately fail us in the end. Okay. I'm hearing in this as well, this urgency to know. Right? There's a hint of, maybe a giant hint, of what we call need to know OCD. Need to know OCD is another one of those silly subtypes that we talk about. It's kind of a flavor or a style of the way OCD manifests. And it's this kind of form of Your brain gives you this question that you just have to know the freaking answer to, and nothing is going to satisfy that. And there's this all-encompassing, enveloping feeling in this one-track mind. I got to answer this question. I've got to know this thing, not because maybe for some aspect there's not a consequence to it, but I just have to freaking know. So you do the effort, you do the research, you do the stuff, and maybe you get close to an answer and then it doesn't satisfy, or the feeling drops off, or another question or a similar question comes up. And now you're back to the races yet again, right? It's this never-ending cycle. So, but I'm hearing this need to know, and with a lot of this stuff, there are things that you and I, in reality, will never fully understand. And OCD hates this. Our anxiety hates this. Our human curiosity hates this as well. We want to know. That's what our brain is about. So, this is one of the things that we have to deal with in treatment in GS. This is one of the things we're going to have to sit with, is that while information is coming out, we may not fully know in our lifetime. We may not fully get to an answer about it, right? I say this as someone who's a Christian, who's a person of faith, and you may say that I was programmed because I grew up in a Western society with Christian parents. Sure, that may be true too, right? And I still feel it to be true. And I may be wrong. We're going to find out eventually. Or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll all just be dead in a box. Who knows, right? But that's part of it, right? And I'll get to where we can go with that, right? But there's an element of, there are things that we may never get to the answer to, and that can feel uncomfortable. As I've talked about before, the core fear, right? Well, what is the implication of this, right? What is the fear of this, right? If I don't solve this, right? If it's true, then what? Is it that you're going to harm somebody else? Is it that you are going to lose control? Is it that you don't truly have agency in this world? Is it that then nothing matters? And that feels uncomfortable and scary, right? So there's a lot of these questions about what's going to happen. And I want you to consider what is driving this? Because that will help you to guide, one, what your exposures are, and two, what you're then going to have to sit with and accept the unknown about, right? You mentioned ICBT. And there's an element that you're going to have to sit with, right? One of the feared vulnerabilities with ICBT, which is one of the modules and one of the concepts, is like the fear is being driven by what you're afraid what you may become and what you fear the most, right? It's this kind of, I don't want to become X, or I don't want X to become true about me or my life or the world around me, and I'm afraid that I might become that. And I'm phrasing this wrong, and I recognize that. But that's part of that fear. It's like, what is it that you're afraid you might become, and what is it that you're fighting against so desperately, right? I also want to point out that we've talked about this before, my concept of trust your compulsive conclusion, okay? GS, you're fighting for something you believe to be true. Through this compulsive cycle, you're fighting for something that you hope to be true. You hope, I'm going to go out on a limb. You hope that you have free will and you have agency in the world around you, and that you are who you say that you are, and that you have the values that you believe that you have, and that you can make those choices and the impact on the world around you. And if given good information, you, with your rational mind, can make a better choice and do something different or do something better or improve yourself, right? You're fighting really hard for that. I think you believe that to be true. Over and over and over again, you're trying to prove that point, but OCD won't let you because it asks, yeah, but what if, or, et cetera, et cetera. We go off into the weeds with that. Trust your compulsive conclusion means act as if what you believe to be true is true. And we're not trusting and outsourcing our confidence to the lack of anxiety, or trusting our belief in truth by this presence of comfort. Instead, we're saying, I believe this to be true. And though I feel anxiety and uncertainty and have all these thoughts going on, I'm going to act as if the thing that I believe is true and move forward in life as if it is, right? Now, that's very act-based, and there's a lot that I'm going to talk about that's kind of act-based, right? So let's get on to what you can do with this, and I'm going to have some water first. Okay. Oh, too much water. Okay, so here's some things. So first off, for treatment. Now, again, I'm not going to fight with you on whether or not it is or is not true, because I don't freaking know. But also, you emailed the OCD guy. You emailed me. You didn't email Alex O'Connor. You didn't email Dr. Impronounceable last name. You emailed me. Why'd you email me and not somebody else? I'm willing to bet because deep down, somewhere within you, you believe this is OCD and not a scientific or philosophical problem. I think at the very least, you're recognizing that there is an OCD cycle going on here and that this is the core of it, right? This is the problem. So why I want to bring that up is to illustrate that point that you kind of know where to go with this. You kind of know what this is about. And if you know and believe that this is OCD at your heart of hearts, act like it. Let's act like it. Let's pretend like it is true. And if it is OCD, let's treat it like it is, which means we acknowledge the cycle, we acknowledge the urge, we acknowledge the process of OCD. We talked about that OCD cycle. We want to acknowledge that we can't control our thoughts. We cannot control the feelings that we have. Sometimes we get unwanted, weird, intrusive thoughts. Sometimes we get feelings that we don't want that seem to be inconsistent with who we are. We get physical sensations that don't make any stinking sense. And that's part of life, right? And that we can control what we do as best we possibly can, okay? So from that, we can pull back on those compulsive behaviors. And that's what I'm going to say. The first and number one thing that I want you to do, GS, is to look at the compulsions that you're doing. So these are the obligatory actions that you're doing to fight against the thought, to get to a sense of confidence and peace again, and to eliminate this fear of danger, okay? And that may be cutting out watching YouTube, listening to podcasts, reading articles, scouring Reddit to try to get this answer, to try to satisfy and scratch that itch. That's going to be hard, I bet, because it feels negligent. It feels dangerous. It feels silly. The voice may argue that it's that, you know, if you do decide to cut it out, well, you just did it because I told you to, or something like that. When we cut out compulsions first, we're working towards not reinforcing the cycle. We're working towards not doing actions based on fear, based on uncertainty, but instead we want to redirect our energies and our efforts, that which we have control over, into things that we value more. And that's where I would encourage you to start, is by doing things in life that you care about. And I'm willing to bet that things here matter. And I bet there are things right now that you do care about, that you value, that your brain says you don't actually value. And so therefore they don't matter. But I'm willing to bet part of you does, right? So the first thing to do is to start making a list. What are the things that you do compulsively? Are you asking, are you on ChatGPT going bonkers asking it questions, right? Are you on YouTube? Are you watching videos? Are you rewatching videos and listening to podcasts that these researchers have said? Have you gone to their articles, et cetera, et cetera? Are you emailing them these questions, right? All of those are trying to satisfy this same question. And that's where I would encourage you to cut back on. Maybe it's just cutting out one to start. And then after a week or two, it's cutting out another one. And it's slowly pulling back on them. And I know that's going to be hard, but working with a therapist is certainly going to be able to help you kind of make a game plan for that, right? So we have to accept the presence of these thoughts and feelings, right? Once we cut out those compulsions, well, then we're stuck with and we're sitting with the feeling and that thought, right? We are going to have to accept the presence of those thoughts, whether or not they're from you or they're from the simulation bot or the matrix or wherever they're coming from. We have to sit with they are there, those questions and thoughts. And we have to learn that we have to tolerate the presence of them. We have to tolerate the implication, the anxiety related to the implication of them, and we have to tolerate the discomfort of not taking any action. Okay, none of this accepts that you don't have free will or that you do. It says, what I'm saying is we're sitting with the discomfort related to the idea that we might not have free will. And note what that feeling is. So when you sit there and say, all right, I'm not going to research right now, and I'm just going to sit, I'm going to sit. And when I say sit there, it might mean go for a walk with. It might mean watch The Office with. It might mean go to the gym with, or go to class, or go to work, or go on a date with that feeling of discomfort. And note where it is in your body. This, at its core, I think, is what OCD treatment is. It is disengagement from the narrative and sitting with and make space for the discomfort. OCD is an anxiety disorder. It is a real and helpful and good emotional feeling, anxiety, out of order. It is disordered. You're feeling it way too much and in situations where you shouldn't be feeling it. So it is a feeling problem, not a thought problem. We're not going to think our way out of OCD. Dude, if you could have thought your way out of OCD, you would have done it already. But instead it gets you further entangled. We're sitting with this feeling. The way out of it is through tolerating the feeling and saying, I don't like the feeling. I don't like the implication of it. And yet I have to sit through it. Okay. So I'll give you an example. An example is this, like, okay, so I like my kids. I like them. They're good most of the time. I don't necessarily want to kill them. I sometimes want to shake them. I'm not going to. But if you're a parent and you haven't had that thought, I don't think you're actually a parent. I like them, okay? But they're not here right now. And if I have the thought, what if they aren't alive right now? That's going to make me sad. It is a sad thought. Even with all the frustration, I still love those ridiculous monsters. It's a sad thought. Now, right now, I cannot prove they are alive. I can't. There's no way for me to do that. Okay? This is Schrodinger's cat, essentially, right? So I don't know if they're alive right now. So maybe they are alive. Now, here's the thing. They probably are. Historically speaking, they have been. But I know at some point they will not be. Right? I hope that is ages and ages hence. But I don't know right now. So if I were to get anxiety or sadness or worry, I would need to sit with that feeling or take action, right? I would need to call them, and I might be able to talk to them, and that might prove that they are alive. But anxiety can also say, well, maybe it was just a figment of my imagination. Maybe it was a robot. Maybe it was, the T-1000 impersonating them. That's a reference for old people. So it could be anything, right? But there's only really one way that I'm going to know, and is I'm going to go home and I'm going to see them. But between now and then, I need to sit with this question about whether or not they are. And that's an unknown right now. And I have to find a way to live my life with this unknown. So I'm going to continue on with this podcast until it's done with this unknown. And that's a weird place to be. And GS, you'll have to figure out a way that you can live with that feeling and make space for it. And one of the ways we do that is we acknowledge that feeling is going to be there, and the feeling of uncertainty and the thought is going to be there. And you can make space for it. There's the ACT has expansion as an exercise where you really focus on what the feeling is, and you think about you're making space. You're expanding what emotions and thoughts you're willing to endure, what you're willing to have in that moment, and have alongside of your life. So in that moment, I need to sit with and move along with the feeling that maybe they aren't alive, and that may be sad or scary or nerve-wracking. And you need to sit with that feeling. And where do you feel it in your body? Is it tension in your neck? Is it in your stomach? Is it a vice around your head? What color is that vice around your head when you think about it? Does it have a sound? Is it like an right? Is it like, if this feeling, like the stomach drop feeling, is it like, does it have the sound of ooh? Is it big? Is it small? Is it pushing out? Is it a sucking in? Really become intimately aware and acquainted with what that feeling is. And we need to sit with that feeling and get to know it without fighting it, without getting rid of it, without trying to justify it, by just saying, hey, bro, this sucks. And it's here. And it's here for as long as it's there. And it will go away. As evidenced by the fact that it comes back, it will always go away. So for this time that it's here, can you get up and over that hump for the time that it's there? Okay, let me keep going. I think one of the most important things we can do with existential fears like this is, aside from eliminate or cut out the compulsions, is live life meaningfully. Now, you might say nothing matters. What if nothing matters, you said? Well, maybe nothing matters. My question to you is, what do you want to matter? If you say nothing matters, but it sounds like you're fighting for wanting things to matter, what do you want to matter? Do you want justice to matter? Do you want joy to matter? Do you want happiness to matter? Do you want music to matter to you, right? What are the things that you want to be important? And I'm willing to bet that will actually reflect what values you do have through the idea of what you want to have. There's a wishing component to it, but by saying, I want these things to matter, you do reflect what actually matters to you. Now, I want you to go and then do those things as best you possibly can, right? Now, it's going to feel false. It's going to feel fake. And that's part of what you're making space for. You're pursuing it with importance, but it's going to feel as if it doesn't matter. Okay, take that feeling of it doesn't matter into whatever that thing is, and do it as best you possibly can. So I'll put it this way, and I've given this example before. So let's say that we are indeed in the matrix, or you can say it's all in my head, or it's I forget which one that is, solipsism. Anyways, like let's say we live in the matrix. Okay, so if we live in the matrix, then nothing matters. We're all being run by robots, and I'm hooked up to some machine. Anyways, well, in the matrix, I have a job to do. In the matrix, I have bills to pay. In the matrix, I have matrix kids to feed. So I'm going to go and live my life and, do my job and care for my matrix kids and try to raise them up in good matrix ways so that they can go out and live their matrix life, ethically and kindly and joyfully and, all that stuff, make connections and friends with other matrix ridiculous monsters. And I'm going to go and do that as best I possibly can, because if nothing matters and I say, well, F all this stuff, I'm just going to go do whatever I want, well, then I'm going to be accused of neglecting said Matrix kids, and I'm going to go to Matrix jail. And I'm going to lose my Matrix MFT license. And I don't want to do that because I worked really hard for it. So I would rather live in the Matrix with my Matrix kids as free as I can, not in Matrix jail, rather than saying nothing matters and treating it as if nothing matters. Similar for you, GS. What's going to matter for you? And let's say if we're giving up on answering the question, and maybe we don't have free will, then let's go out and live our life as best we possibly can. Now, by the way, I'll make this argument, and this is a separate point. I wasn't going to make this, and I don't have a whole lot to go on this or a whole lot to share with this in detail. But all right, let's say science is discovering that we don't have free will. Then you know what? A lot of not Baptists. What are they? Calvinists? A lot of Calvinists are going I told you so, right? It's catching up to some religious traditions that say, everything is predestined and nothing really matters, and we're going on throughout this life by a predestined thing from God. So maybe science is just proving God. So I'll let you fight with that. All right. Anyways, this is a separate point. So here's what I want you to do, GS. I want you to think about what you want to matter to you in this. I want you to think about what's important, and I want you to go do that. Think about if that was a value of yours, whatever that value is, what's one thing that you can do today that would be getting you close towards that would get you on the road towards that value, and go take steps towards it. Do that thing and make space for that feeling being there of uncertainty or discomfort, or it's not real, or this is BS, or I'm just a figment of my own imagination, or whatever it might be. But still go do that, and then do it again tomorrow, and do it again the day after that. And we do that, and we feel that sense of periodic joy. Enjoy that sense of joy. Feel it. And maybe it's a figment of your imagination, but you know what? It's a pretty good matrix feeling that we get sometimes. And focus on that. And then you're going to go and do your values tomorrow and take one more step towards your values. And sometimes it's going to feel pretty good. And sometimes you're going to get this thought, and this thought's going to be really scary, and it's going to be barking at you that maybe none of it matters. And we go, maybe none of it does. But I'm going to keep going as if something could. So, GS, I hope this has been helpful. I know it's a lot, and again, this is a lot more complicated. And of course, there are good exposures you can do, but I'm not going to focus on those today. I'm focusing on act and values today. So, I hope you're working with a therapist, and I hope that you can find a way to live this life as best you possibly can with as much joy and peace and patience and kindness and just, silliness and endurance as you possibly can. So thanks for listening, and to everybody else out there, and to you as well, GS. Take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.